I read the synopsis, the mini synopsis for this, and I saw a film at Cannes recently, which is called Little Joe.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and it's sort of like a play on an old genre film, and now
Yeah.
Elizabeth Moss is coming out with The Invisible Man, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find it fun that that old properties are part of a new vernacular. So I was wondering, what's the genesis of the project? How did you guys think about such a thing?
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about this idea since I was like a little girl.
Really?
Strangely. Yeah. I read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and it was the first thing I'd read that was by a woman with a male protagonist. And Victor, the Dr. Frankenstein, always felt like a woman to me, frankly. I was so energized by how free Frankenstein was, how he was just obsessed with creating something with his mind, and that the romance in the film is somewhat secondary. And yeah, I guess I've always been really obsessed with this story of creation and its consequences, and I thought, as women, we can't talk about creation without talking about our bodies. So this idea of a female Dr. Frankenstein who has to use her body to do her work is something that's been kind of soaking for a long time with me. I wrote an early draft and brought it to Brendan, and he improved it greatly.
So what element did you bring in?
Well, I think the way we usually write together, Laura has this really incredible visual sense, and she'd come up with these like amazing images. But if I write a first draft of a movie, it's usually 50 pages too long, and if Laura writes first draft of a movie, it's usually 50 pages too short.
Yeah.
So we kind of ping pong back and forth. But like Laura said, this is a really personal story that she came up with. But when I came to it, I really started to, I don't know, just relate to the characters in a way. I think everyone in this movie has something that they really click into, whether it's their profession or being a parent. It's something they think that defines their life, and it was just really fascinating to explore these characters and think about what happens when that's taken away, and what lengths will people go to try and reclaim something like that.
Yeah, the thing that you identify yourself as, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a mother, I'm a, whatever it is, it's ripped away from you. And that happens to the two protagonists of this film.
I was curious about the tone of the film. I could see this as a couple of things, like very clinical, like the little Joe that I referenced short before. Obviously, there might be some fantastical elements, or bringing us back to the horror aspects of Frankenstein, which is not really a horror film, but then I could see how this could be potentially comical as well. I was just wondering, what kind of tone do we find in this film?
Yeah, we think it's very funny. It's got humor that hopefully is grounded in the sort of absurdity of the situation and the relationships between these two characters.
Yeah.
We reference Dead Ringers a lot, the Cronenberg film,
yes.
which, you wouldn't call it a comedy, but there's a lot of dry humor in the film. I think in terms of tone, Little Joe is so sort of slow and restrained the way it's filmed, and that's definitely something that we've been thinking about. Safe is another good example, really looking at films where the camera is patient and a little bit removed and kind of allowing the action to play out in front of you. As a production designer, I'm usually thinking about spaces, because that's my background. I'm thinking about spaces and how they can bring people together and how they can isolate people. In a dream world, we build this apartment from scratch, and we get to really think about the architecture as a reflection of the character's relationship.
Parasite was that. He built it from scratch.
Yes.
Yeah.
God, every set.
It's doable.
It's doable.
Just get the right financing. What are some of the influence outside of cinema that helped inform this? Is there any, I don't imagine there's any personal experiences, but is there any potential headlines, or there's any artistic renderings or writings that outside of this, we'll call it the source material?
Yeah.
Outside of cinema?
And perhaps you can comment on how it might sound like.
Well, I've been a boom operator and a sound technician for 20 years. to be frank, like a lot of that really, it's really just the technician end.
Yeah.
So while that's been a really gratifying thing, and I've learned so much about how sets work by osmosis, and reading God knows how many scripts, you really can look on the page and be like, oh, is that working? Is that not? And you see it not work. You see it not work on the screen. That's interesting. It's not as much of a creative or technical thing, but I don't know. There's some music maybe. Like I think Ariel Marks is this composer who we've worked with on a couple things, and she has such an amazing, just beautiful ability to make really restrained, really simple, haunting music. Like in Friday, which was a short we made.
Yeah.
We've had people say I almost didn't notice like that there was a score there, and I think that's such a huge compliment, and for a movie like this, I think.
Yeah, we've been working with Ariel already. We've been listening to Laurie Anderson and some kind of more kind of digital experimental music from the 80s by women. We've been listening to Tanya Tajak, the throat singer, and really like thinking about like organic sounds and mechanical sounds. We've been listening to sonograms, just those sounds, and Ariel is already sort of manipulating those into instruments and trying to make a palette that sort of feels half human, half machine.
Sweet.
Yeah, we're very excited.
The lab experience, they take you go in innocently and then they break into pieces and then they put you back together again.
Yeah.
It's really Humpty Dumpty, and I always try to picture what that experience might look like. From now, what are you gonna like when they burnt your script, or like what's something that's gonna haunt you? Or
there are these turkeys that roam.
Okay, on the property. Okay.
On the property.
Like big turkeys.
They're like raptors. They're like prehistoric. You look at their kind of dead eyes, and it's a pretty terrifying existential experience. So yeah, when we were in between meetings, because the meetings are incredibly intense, you're working to be present and open while every single idea in your script is challenged. So in between those meetings, you kind of stare off like into the snow, into nothingness, and just like let the ideas work on you. And I have to say, like, something I will remember a long time from now is like looking into the eye of this creature that did not care about my screenplay and did not care about our existence. And it was good. It was a good perspective.
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it really is like the first thing you do when you go in there is there's this intensive writing workshop, and all the different fellows, before we've even had a chance to say hi, are in this room together, and you just have to be open about all these things rapid fire, like about that are incredibly personal, and it's like no one wants to hear you be clever, no one wants to hear you have the snarkiest, smartest thing to say. It's just drill down, why are you here? And it's like a 4-hour thing where you're just in this room, and you just I just talking to everyone afterwards, and there's all these brilliant people from all over like the world, and I'm some schmuck who grew up outside of Boston, and like it just really was a really affirming thing to be like, yo, you have a point of view, you have a voice. And it's about one thing one of the advisors said is like at the beginning is like, everyone here has a voice that has something to say or they wouldn't be here, but you all really need to work on craft. And I really felt like that it was this amazing like extreme sports version of like learn how to do that by being open to being challenged, and that was incredible.
But also providing you with tools. So it wasn't just, here's everything that's wrong with your screenplay, you're welcome. It was like, here are things to think about, and also here are some practical ways to actually address a rewrite, so you didn't feel kind of hung out to dry as you often do with notes.
You're not helpless or hopeless, or
No.
you're equipped, and you got more tools in your toolbox.
Yeah, you can see a path forward.
Yeah.
And I think we're like very glad that we're at the festival, so we were forced to not look at our script for a few days, but we're so excited to dive back into it.
Great. Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure meeting you guys. Congratulations on getting into the labs, which is a needle in the haystack process in itself.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing this.
Thank you very much.
Hey, this is Eric from MyOnCinema.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.